All right, welcome to another exciting edition of the program, The Desk on Global Television, where we look at issues from the global perspective, national and sub-national level. Today is no different, as we've got one of the finest minds in the continent to help us look at a very interesting talking point. We are celebrating or joining the Israelis to mark the October 7 attack, 1 year anniversary of the attack of Gaza by the Hamas group. So we'll be looking at that story keenly. We'll also be focusing on the elections that took place in the local government levels of Rivers State across other states of the Federation. We'll be looking at what is playing out and other talking points. On today's edition is no different. We've got the Director General of the Inter-Patria Advisory Council, IPAC, in the person of Prince Dr. Chinedu Obi, who is in the live studios to help us look at all the very interesting talking points from the global perspective and also on the national level. Dr. Obi, thank you very much for making it to the studios.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, let's just begin from the global scene, looking at the 1 year anniversary of the attack on Israel by the Hamas group. For you, how important has the world made this October 7 look? Because across the world, we notice commemoration of the October 7 attack in different parts of the globe. Is that a sign of showing solidarity to the Israelis?
Well, first, I personally condemn the attack, which the 1 year is marked today. That was dark, sadly, and one thing is very clear. The level of terror in the world today is something that if you don't deal with, we have a threat of possibly a world war. Unfortunately, from the international perspective, people see this from their personal interest. They don't look at it from the humanistic side of it. You sit in your country and someone attacks you, you know, and look at the number of persons, over 1,000 people attacked and many dead, some taken away. If you look at it from the perspective of a friend of Israel, you're sympathetic, or from a humanist perspective, you'll be very sympathetic that such attack will happen to vulnerable, innocent civilians. Expectedly, you find that once you're under attack, the tendency for the normal human being is to fight back. What the world has talked about in recent time, if you watch the last UN program, you discover that a lot of countries were really angry against the US, Israel, over their continued attack, reprisal attack, to, you know. Why, yes, one would have said maybe Israel is taking it more than one would have expected. But the truth about the matter is that every human being that you attack, you shouldn't really bother yourself about how the person responds to an, I think if you have the strength to get angry to attack me, you shouldn't bother about how I respond to it. If I'm a leader, let me president of Nigeria, for instance, and you kill one citizen of Nigeria, my approach to it will be in a way that you will not think of it again. You know, so I think our reaction to it.
But some say this October 7 attack wasn't the first attack before now. Some pundits from the Palestinian point of view will tell you that their lands were, taken from them many years ago in the sharing of the Palestinian land, and which led to even they having this two-state solution coming to be, and the October 7 attack is just one of the various attacks that have occurred between both sides.
Yeah, what we're talking about now is the reaction that followed after this. Nobody remembers where we got to before this point. Yes, it's an unending crisis. Everybody knows it's been there. This two-state solution had really never been accepted even from the Palestinian side. My attitude to it is, yes, everything we're talking about now is post October 7. If someone did not take that, there could have been other ways to deal with it rather than entering a community and killing over 1,000 people. I want to see it from the perspective of a man who sits in his house and get that level of attack, how he responds to it. Like I said to you, maybe my approach to it will be in a manner that you don't try it again.
Okay, as we mark or commemorate the 1-year anniversary, do you see peace close by, especially with now we're seeing it's more like a regional tension with Iran coming out all blast, attacking Israel, unlike before where they go through the militia groups, the Hezbollah, the Hamas, under that guise to attack Israel. Now that they're coming out frontal attack, we're talking about 200 ballistic missiles fired into Israel. Does this give you some concern that there might be a full-blown war in the Middle East?
You're getting to my point. That point that every human being has a right to self-defense.
True.
I sit in my house and I see 200 missiles. What do you expect me to do? To fold my hands, then the 300 will come in? I think we're in for a problem because, tomorrow when Israel responds, you don't know how they're going to respond to it and how allies will want to see it both on the other side. Like I said, my fear is that I hope we don't get into a third world war.
But don't you think the allies, the United Nations, the US, should play a major peace role rather than try to back Israel?
Or be on anybody's side. That's actually I think what the UN should do, not just attack one person.
And sorry, not to cut you short, the recent ban, persona non grata, being declared on Antonio Guterres, does it make it more complicated?
That's what I'm saying, that those side extreme positions is actually where the issue is. When you find this kind of situation, you sit back and speak to the parties in such a way that they feel they are the center. But when you take positions that already give the world impression that you are backing a particular person in the side of the battle, you make reconciliation a bit more difficult.
All right, let's move on. Already we know that the Israel Defense Forces early Monday said its Air Force attacked the command center of the Palestinian militant organization Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The IDF said the command center was located at the Bala area in central Gaza, embedded within the Shuhadat Al-Qasr Hospital. That Al-Qasr Hospital alongside Al-Qasr Mosque is a holy ground. But looking at the fact that Hamas is using that as their military base, doesn't that make it more difficult?
It's complicated. Those are sentiments that you bring to battle. Sometimes terrorists have a way of having human shield. That if you bring the religious side to it, it's to attract, by the time sentiments of religion come into it, is another way of escalating it. These terrorists don't follow, the real processes. They find ways of doing the art of other situation. And, of course, what they want to do is to give the whole impression that all of us are under attack to attract sympathy from places where a person should actually have been neutral.
All right, let's see. Let's get quickly. We have Bish Johnson, who is joining us via Zoom. Let's get his take as regards what's playing out. Hello, Bish Johnson, are you there? Hello, Captain Bish Johnson, are you there? All right, hopefully Captain Bish Johnson, retired from the U.S. Army, will be joining us on the program, The Desk, as we look at very interesting talking point from Israel. And let's move on to other issues while we're waiting for him to rejoin us. Let's look at the fact that the Inspector General of Police, talking about Kayode Egbetokun, has ordered the immediate withdrawal of the police personnel previously deployed to seal off the Secretariat in Rivers State after the elections occurred. Last week, we had IPAC did hold a World Conference as regards their support for the elections to take place in Rivers, and did caution the judiciary not to truncate Nigeria's democracy like it did in 1993. Tell us what the current situation is and your perspective as regards the fact that APP did clear the whole local government areas. of the state?
Okay, first is I think what Rivers State did was to respond to the Supreme Court ruling that no local government should be governed by caretaker committees. The attempt to stop that election with an order is something that is strange to the extent that the Electoral Act had said under no circumstance will any court stop elections either at the state or federal level. So that development in Rivers before Saturday was unfortunate, and I think we need to commend Fubara for standing his ground. Yeah, with the Inspector General of Police withdrawn the police from there, the escalating the tension there is something I think should have been done much earlier.
But initially, you remember the IG did say they were not going to give backings or security cover for that election.
Which is unknown to us. Is no, that's not
partisan?
fair to the system. It's more or less like leaving the state to self-help. Is working against the mandate of the police. Ideally, the police, by the constitution, is supposed to provide security for all Nigerians, including institutions like election institutions. So I think that was overreaching his mandate. He should have been able to provide security for that election. But that they are doing the withdrawal now, because of course what you saw happening is that a lot of interested parties trying to see how they can create more tension in that place, and of course only God knows what they want to achieve. But what every Nigerian should pray and expect is that we don't carry this to a point where Rivers State gets in a situation where it will set up the country ablaze. Because of course, you know, Rivers State is a state that on a good day is even neutralized. So creating a situation where you would pull out worrying factors from this, not something I think would be good for the country. Now, looking at the elections generally, IPAC by position had insisted that the role of the State Independent Electoral Commission, being the body responsible for conducting elections in the state, is like a role of coronating candidates nominated by governors. Okay. That's not an election. IPAC had always been in the position that the constitution should be amended to take that responsibility away from SEC and given to INEC. The idea is to take away this. If you notice, the pattern of these elections is started in APC control state.
All the chairmen were APC.
Everybody goes from chairman and council. In PDP control states, you will find the same thing, apart from maybe a few states like the one in Bauchi, in fact, the one that just concluded in Jigawa, where you see a bit of... But parties. If you look at generally, it's always like the state in control just do a list of persons and submit as election. So IPAC's position is that if democracy at the level of local government should have been that level of government where the real Nigerians, the grassroots, gets governance. Now, if you now subject it to all these carry-go situation where a governor writes a list of people and give to SEC to announce, in some states, when you look at the drama, it looks so funny that in this level of democracy, that's the kind of thing was seen. And I think any good Democrat would be worried about it, because take for instance now, each local government in Nigeria, 774, each one gets 200 million naira on the average, and that money is judiciously spent within the 774 local governments. You can see the level of impact to have in our economy. So I think every Democrat should work towards ensuring that the election at that level of government is the one that the real people have the opportunity of representing their people and giving value to their people.
All right, we'll get back to you. Let's join Bill Johnson, who has joined us already. Captain Bill Johnson, retired. Thank you very much for joining us on the desk.
Thank you for having me, Tony. Good evening.
All right, let's look at the elections in Rivers State and the fact that the Inspector General of Police was bold enough to withdraw his personnel, saying they were not going to give security cover. How dangerous was that move from your perspective as a security expert?
Highly dangerous. You see, the issue of law and order is a constitutional matter. It's not something that can be adjudicated by any court of law. The police has a constitutional responsibility to maintain law and order at every instance, whether the group are for the government or against the government. That's why you see when there's a protest in other countries, the police will always be there to make sure that law and order is maintained. Because this is a social contract between citizens and the state. The state in this particular instance, meaning the Nigerian state, is that, look, we will not resort to self-help. We will relinquish our ability for self-help, for defending ourselves to the state. In return, the state will also provide security for us by way of maintaining law and order. So by not providing security on the day of election, the police had, on its own, violated the very constitutional responsibility of government, which is protection of lives and property. The police, being an institution of the state, is saddled with that responsibility of the state to ensure that law and order is maintained at all times, 24/7. So what surprised me is a situation where there are two court orders of two different courts of the same coordinates. And the police decided that the order that it was going to obey is the one that was given in a federal high court in Abuja. Abuja is 643.3 kilometers away from Rivers State, where the election was taking place. Instead of taking the order of the Rivers State High Court in Port Harcourt, where this election was taking place, that ordered the police, the civil defense, the army, and every other security agents to provide security for the people. The police decided that the order that it was going to take was the one that was given in Abuja. You read my article. I feel that our federalism is conflicted and confused. You saw what is happening in the United States with the prosecution of Donald Trump, the former president, with the issue of January 6th, election subversion, and the issue of retention of classified materials in his home in Florida. Even though these were federal offenses, but the special counsel chose to prosecute Donald Trump on the issue of classified material in Florida, where the offense was committed. And the one that had to do with the subversion of election January 6th, which took place in Washington, D.C., the special counsel decided that that matter will be prosecuted in Washington, D.C., where the matter took place. He could have taken it to Massachusetts, could have taken it to Boston, or to Seattle, or to anywhere in America. But they decided that it should be where the offense took place. So why will a court, whether federal or anything, give an order on a matter that is 643 points in which he was adjudicating? So we have to take a proper look at our country and our federalism and how we are running it, so that we'll stop creating all these unnecessary confusions. And the police on its own needs to take some step back, redress these steps, because every day the Nigerian police continue to move in a direction that is creating erosion of public confidence in our police.
All right. For you, do you think the IGP needs to be sanctioned? Does he need to answer questions for that action of refusing to provide security for that elections? And does it show that he's partisan, probably, with the FCT minister?
There is no other way to interpret it. If you look at it, critically, there were two substitute court orders. One from the FCT that said don't provide security, and the one from Port Harcourt that said provide security. So why would the police decide to pick the one from FCT that said don't provide security? In complete abdication of their number one constitutional responsibility. Because that is the only thing we pay police salary in this country to do for us, is to maintain law and order. That's why we fund them through our budgetary allocation. Every other thing the Nigerian police is doing in Nigeria is secondary. Their first duty, primary duty, is maintenance of law and order, protection of lives and property. And like I stated earlier, that is the number one responsibility of government. And the government in this instance is the state. And the police being an institution of the state has delegated that responsibility through the Constitution to the police. So the police cannot, at any point in time,
so do you expect a sanction?
Say, look, we will not do our job.
Do you expect a sanction?
In other crimes, right? In other insane crimes, somebody should have been resigning by now. But of course, this is Nigeria. We operate in Nigeria as if this place is a jungle.
All right.
So I'm not seeing any hairs rolling, but ordinarily hairs are supposed to roll. Some people are supposed to resign. They're supposed to be sanctioned because the police cannot refuse to do their job. That is their job, their first and primary responsibility.
All right, sorry to take you back, but we're going to take you on this matter before we let you go. Today is the 7th of October, 2024, exactly 1 year after the October 7 attack on Israel. What's your take as regards the journey so far and any end in sight to the Gaza war?
Well, it has been a disaster for everybody. Both the Israelis, the Palestinians, now the Lebanese. I have always maintained that there is absolutely no reason for all this. I am sure that if Hamas would go back in time, and if they knew that what has happened to them will happen to them, I am sure that even if Israel leaves their border open, they will not do what they have done on October 7th. If Gaza has been completely wiped out, it's going to take generations and hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild Gaza. There's an unprecedented humanitarian disaster. Children have been orphaned. Wives have been, widowed. Husbands have been, have lost wives, property, everything destroyed. I have always believed that, look, violence is not the best approach. The best approach remains people sitting on a round table and dialoguing. It's difficult, it's hard, but it's very doable. It has happened in some other places. And there should be absolutely no reason for anybody to resort to violence to be able to achieve any objective.
All right, let's wrap up the conversation. Do you see the fact that Lebanon is in the picture now, Iran also direct attack on Israel, and Israel vowing to also get his own pound of flesh back? How do you see this panning out at the end of the day?
There is that sphere of, wider escalation within the region. Depending on, how Israel responds to the barrage of projectiles that were launched at, Israel by the Iranians. Now, the U.S. president has said and asked that Israel, even if they are going to respond, that response should be proportionate. They should not go after their nuclear plants. They should do it. They should do it in a way that it is not, proportional to what was done to them. However, if you look at it, even from that perspective, that it has to be proportionate, Now, we saw 200 ballistic missiles. These are ballistic missiles. These are not rockets or cruise missiles. These are ballistic missiles. They are much more effective. They travel at a very faster speed. It's much more difficult to defend against. If Israel had not had the kind of air defense system that he had put in place, there would have been a lot of deaths and destruction. So I don't know how Israel is going to respond. So, but depending on how Israel responds, that's what is going to determine whether this thing is going to continue to spiral out of control as it is currently happening right now.
Incidentally,
you see it has extended to Lebanon.
Right.
It's already in Gaza. There's West Bank. So it all depends on how Israel responds, and I hope Israel responds in a proportionate way that is not going to lead to a wider escalation.
All right, Captain Bish, hold on. My guest in the live studio, Dr. Chinedu Obi, says he knows how well Israel is going to respond. Let's get his take before we go into other talking matters.
I think I said that when I made my intervention earlier on, that you don't slap a man and expect him not to cry. And like I said, sometimes the reason why you penalize certain action is for deterrence. If you keep quiet as somebody threw 200 missiles at you, in psychology, there's something we call actions rewarded are likely repeated. On the contrary, action punished is less likely repeated. I don't think if I am a leader, I will watch and somebody will throw 200 missiles in my country and I thank him for doing it. You can imagine if Israel didn't have that level of defense, maybe it would be a ghost town today. Who wants to live in a ghost town? I think the world should know, and maybe it's even a lesson to every other part of the world, that you don't look for trouble and expect that someone will keep quiet. And I think for those who are also moderating into it, the earlier we begin to live in a world where we discuss peace, the better for us. Because sometimes this war, you start it and it looks small. You wouldn't know where it ends. Like he said, if Hamas knew that this level of devastation will happen, I'm not sure any right person, but I know that the Israel I know, if you throw one stone, they return with 20. So why would, unless you have capacity to absorb 20?
So we're hoping to see 400 ballistic missiles.
There are more from the Israel that I know. And that's why if I am a country near Israel, I wouldn't want to look for their trouble because I know how they will respond to it.
All right, Captain Bish, your final words as regards, let's come back home. Your final words as regards, we've got Governor Sim Fubara of Rivers State has alleged that there are plans to mobilize 20 people per unit to attack the newly sworn-in local government chairman in the state. Fubara, however, urged them to be calculative in their approach. He spoke while swearing in these new members. How do you see this playing out in terms of the Rivers crisis?
Look, it's already happening. The crisis that the governor is talking about is already happening. That we've had, that there are instances where I think a particular local government area in Rivers State, the council hall has been burnt down. We've seen videos of people blocking entrances to various local government secretariats in the state. And so what he was talking about is already happening. But I think I want to appeal to all the parties. We understand, the will of the people has not always determined who wins the election in Nigeria. It doesn't, whether it's presidential or gubernatorial, nonetheless, local government elections. You've seen how local government elections are conducted in Nigeria. The party of whoever is the sitting governor seems to win all the positions. However, there shouldn't be any room for political violence. Nobody deserves to die. Look at what happened in Akwa Ibom. The same day that Rivers State was holding their local government election, there was election in Akwa Ibom State. Governor Emmanuel Udom, the predecessor to the current governor, Omo Eno, was there at the swearing-in ceremony. His Excellency Godswill Akpabio, the Senate President of a different political party, of APC, was also there. So you saw how harmonious it was. Even though I don't know whether that was the true outcome of that election, but at least it was peaceful. The same thing can also happen in Rivers State. There is no human being who has gotten to any level they are, whether in Nigeria or anywhere else, that did it all by themselves. Somebody somewhere would have to support you to get to where you are. It's not only in Rivers State that you have a governor that sponsored his successor. Governor Senator Dave Omahe of Ebonyi State brought in his successor. They are not at loggerheads with each other. Ifeanyi Okowa of Delta brought in his successor. They are not fighting. There have been governors that brought in their own successors, and there's peace in their states. And the reason why all of us are talking about Rivers State is because of the position, the strategic position that Rivers State occupies in our economic well-being. Any violence will lead to destruction of, our activities in our oil and gas sector, and that has severe consequences,
economic implication,
for our foreign earnings and the revenue, and thereby we adversely affect our economy and the ability of our government to attend to the needs of the people. That's why most Nigerians that I have listened to are preaching for peace. Let's allow peace to reign. Election must not be do or die. If you lose today, you can win tomorrow.
All right.
You win today, you can lose tomorrow. That is the spirit of election, and I think that is what we need in this country. If we can get our politicians to look at elections from that perspective, we'll be on our way to attaining the level of democracy that most Nigerians are yearning for.
All right, I want to say a big thank you, Bishop Johnson, for joining us within the short notice, and thank you for your very grand analysis of all the security situations in Gaza and in Rivers State. Thank you for being part of the desk.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll continue the discussion. We'll go for a quick break. When we return from the break, I still have Dr. Chinedu Obi, who is the DG of IPAC, right in the studio, as we'll be looking at Labour Party welcoming Kwankwaso offer to be Obi's running mate and other very interesting talking points after this break. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. You're still watching The Desk on Global Television, and Dr. Chinedu Obi, the DG of IPAC, is still in the live studios to help us look at issues. All right, before we run into the Kwankwasia movement, Sim Fubara, the governor of Rivers, has already warned the sworn-in chairman of a pending attack. From IPAC's perspective, what can the parties do to ensure this doesn't happen? And do you think it's because of the rumors making the rounds that he's likely to move to APP, or in some other school of thought say he's likely to move them from the APP and back to the PDP?
Well, I'm not in the mind of Fubara, but all I think every good Nigerian should think about is how peace can return to Rivers State. These gladiators, I'm not sure this fight is for the Rivers people. It's about control of power.
So ego fight now?
Yes, more of ego. And where does it lead us to? Like I said, my worry is the strategic position of Rivers. If this continues, it has a lot of economic implication on Nigeria, because that's one of the places where we get our oil.
Sure.
And if it starts from Rivers, it can enter Delta, it can enter Bayelsa, it can enter Akwa Ibom. Then we're finished.
The link up of the different ethnic groups.
Then we're finished. So because of the closeness of the ethnic groups. So from IPAC perspective, we've been preaching peace. We believe that election, people will lose and some people also win. We're not, at this stage, nobody's even talking about the election. The election is gone. All we're saying, can we have peace? And I would also suggest to the real Rivers people knowing that they are the ones at the receiving end. If there's going to be destruction, it's the children of the poor that will be victims. So people should warn their children and work to stay out of violence, and let's have peace in Rivers State.
Do you think, this is just playing the devil's advocate, do you think finally it feels like Fubara has beaten Wike to it with this win at the local government levels?
Well, the truth is that there was an election and now we have results. There were other results like that in the other states, and heaven hasn't fallen.
So do you think Wike is going to back down now?
I think emotional intelligence will tell him that there's always one governor at every point in time. He was governor for 8 years. I'm not sure anybody put him through this.
He would tell you Rotimi Amechi gave him a tough time.
I don't think it was this bad that Rivers has become a crisis-wise zone, and I think it's not good for the state. So I think some people should put their ego behind and allow the governor that he was instrumental to his election, so he should allow him to be governor. When you give somebody the opportunity to lead, he should be allowed to lead.
All right, let's move into the next very interesting talking point where the Labour Party welcomed the offer by the new Nigerian People's Party presidential candidate in the 2023 elections, Senator Rabiu Kwankwaso, to be the running mate of Labour Party's Peter Obi in the 2027 presidential polls. Kwankwaso, in a recent viral post, indicated his willingness to serve as running mate for the former Labour Party presidential flag bearer barely 2 years after talks between both parties went south. For you, do you think this is this good news for the opposition group or bad news for the ruling party?
Well, I'm not a member of the Labour Party. I'm not a member of the NNPP. I'm a Nigerian. But why I was smiling is that if Kwankwaso is saying he now can be vice president to Peter Obi, I remember there was this level of permutation before the last election. And some people said, no, I'm more politically savvy than the other person.
Sure.
But I think maybe the experience of that election, there's sometimes some results can humble. If the partnership is pro-Nigeria, I don't have a problem with it. If it is state capture, you can, I see he has the capacity now, let me see if we can merge. Because the truth about the matter is that if both of them had worked together in the last election, they may have been taken for granted, but I'm sure the result of the election would have given a different, but apparently that's what the permutation is all about now. And like I said, if it's a permutation that will work in the interest of Nigerians, why not? That's politics is a struggle to, control the polity.
With this we've seen, do you see the PDP agreeing to join forces and probably the much talked about third mega force coming to being?
I want to see a third force in the next election. But my challenge, particularly what is happening in Labour Party now, what is happening in PDP, you discover that there's no seriousness. Okay. Ideally, if there's a third force, and you can imagine if you look at the result of last election, Tinubu is our president today with less than 35% of the votes. The other 65% cut across the other candidates. You can imagine if that was put together, it would have been a clear victory. So I want to see a 2027 where this kind of permutations can work. But incidentally, I want to be on top. People are interested in being the president, and this synergy is not something they take seriously. Otherwise, if we can kill our individual interests and come together, maybe we can present a third force. So I think
but
it's also too early.
Both of them had almost similar amount because from our records, the Labour Party had about 16 million.
6.something million.
While Kwankwaso
had 1 point something million.
Yeah, 1 point something million. So
yes.
It shows Labour has that.
Labour has an advantage. This is why I said they've tested powers now and know where the power actually lies, and which is why he is now willing to talk about.
Do you think Labour is going to have that same influence they had before the elections?
What you discover, it wasn't Labour. It was the person.
The personality.
It was the P2B personality that Labour Party never came near 5th position in elections before P2B's entrance. So I think the chemistry would have been a P2B Kwankwaso. Like I said to you, if they had tried it in 2023, it would have been a walkover. I don't know how it's going to play out now if that happens. But I think the economy of the country now should make Nigerians think. And like I always say, the alien Nigerians begin to drop the attitude of personality, ethnicity, sentiments of region, sentiments of
voting based on those.
I want us to move to a
factors.
situation where we look at the condition of the country. If it requires a man from Gaza to redeem Nigeria, I think that's what Nigerians should be looking at. Because when you go to the market to buy, I don't know where they queue along ethnic or religious line. Still the same all of us buying in the same market. So we should begin to think about who can take us out of the doldrum.
All right, let's just talk a little bit about Benue, though we had mentioned this earlier on, where it's the Benue State Governor, Reverend Father Hyacinth Alia, has described the outcome of Saturday's local government elections as the testament of the political maturity and democratic values of the people of the state. Meanwhile, Abamoro is also tackling the governor as regards the sweeping of the victory by the APC. We talked about the issue that every ruling party seems to sweep. How bad would this be if this trend continues?
I think it's not good for our democracy, and which is why we continue to insist that those who run the election at that level should be a bit more transparent and have an inclusive thing.
Is that why they call for INEC to be this?
The one to conduct the election. That's why IPAC believes that SEC should be scrapped and the responsibility to conduct local government election be given to INEC. Yes, INEC has its challenges, but INEC seems to have a more credible election than what happens in the state. I agree that no matter how strong a party will be in the state, there should be a position at least 20%. So I would have, if the result had come up with at least 20% of opposition winning the election, I can say, okay, it may represent to an extent, but 100% is
Sweep
is unachievable, particularly in this kind of economy where the average Nigerian is hungry.
All right, let's wrap it up with one controversy that has to do with the NYC certificate saga. Tinubu's Minister Musawa denying any wrongdoing. Yes, the Minister of Art, Culture and Creative Economy, Hannatu Musawa, has again refuted and refused to clear up the controversy surrounding her National Youth Service Corps certificate scandal. Speaking as a guest on a TV program, Musawa insisted she won't be distracted by such discussion. The minister failed to provide the Senate with evidence that she participated in the mandatory NYC scheme during her screening after President Bola Tinubu sent her name for confirmation. Musawa was eventually confirmed in 2023, but some persons dragged her to court, claiming she got the appointment without completing the mandatory service as aberration. The case was thrown out in 2024 April with presiding Judge Justice James Omotosho of the Federal High Court in Abuja ruling that the plaintiff lacked local standing to institute the suit. Is it about the local standing of the who instituted the suit, or the crime of not participating in the mandatory? It's called mandatory to the nation and not to a state or a person.
Tony, this Nigeria is sometimes a huge joke. You can imagine someone had been nominated. We did not do screening before nomination. And even when the person is nominated, we are still talking about issues of certification. I should think that a serious government, before they even appoint anyone,
background check,
will do a serious background check. And there's something called DSS,
okay.
Screening. What are they screening? Is it not to know who is this? Where is he coming from? Does he pose any security threat to the nation? Does he have the capacity to do the job? What is his pedigree? This job he wants to be invited to do, does he have the competencies to do it? Is he qualified to do it? These are the kind of things that we should have. At this stage, I think it's embarrassing for us to be talking about a man or woman who was sworn in as minister over a year ago. So, which means if she were to be fraudulent, or if she had would have had that for 1 year, I think what we should be doing is to tell her. In fact, in a normal situation, in some clients where people think with integrity and dignity, someone would have resigned and don't want this kind of issue discussed. So I think what should be done is what IPAC wants to introduce into the electoral system, where we've signed an MOU with Chartered Institute for Forensic and Fraud Investigators of Nigeria. The idea of that is to have, before you even run election, that your certification is certified, forensic-wise, so that we don't have this level of embarrassment. So I think going forward, beyond those who want to contest election, the federal government can also apply that, subject the certificates of all their would-be appointees to forensic screening, so that we can be sure the country will be safe with this kind of level of embarrassment.
All right, that's how much I think time is going to allow us to take on today's edition of the program, The Desk. I want to say a big thank you to the Director General of the Inter-Party Advisory Council in the person of Prince Dr. Chinedu Obi for joining us in the studio and helping us look at all the very interesting talking points from Israel's commemoration of the one-year anniversary of the October 7 attack by Hamas group, and also other talking points. I also want to say a big thank you to Captain Bish Johnson, retired from the U.S. Army, for joining us and giving us his own security perspective to the IGP's decision not to provide security during the Rivers State elections. And I want to say thank you very much for your very grand analysis. My name is Anthony Momodu, saying thank you for joining me on the program, The Desk. Let's do this again tomorrow.